Around the World Lit Audio. The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Part 1. Week 4. Chapters 10 to 12. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter recap. In week 3, the VARIET's director Stopa woke up to find Walland in his armchair, and was transported to Yalta without his shoes. Ivan Homeless had a careful conversation with Dr. Stravinsky that went nowhere. Korovi visited the VARIET to arrange the black magic performance, while Walland settled into apartment 50 on Sadova Street, and played chess alone as Moscow moved below him unsuspecting. Part 1. Chapters 10 through 12. Part 1. Chapter 10. The news from Yalta. The telegrams from Yalta were causing considerable confusion at the VARIET. Stopa had been sending them, frantic, increasingly desperate communications from a city he could not explain being in, describing his situation in terms that made no administrative sense and requesting assistance in terms that were, frankly, embarrassing for a theater director. The financial director Rimsky read the telegrams with the expression of a man encountering a problem that does not fit into any of his existing categories of problems. He was a practical man, Rimsky. He believed in schedules and budgets and the orderly management of theatrical operations. He did not believe in people teleporting to Yalta. He believed, therefore, that something else was happening, something that had a rational explanation he had not yet found. He looked at the telegrams again. He looked at the contracts with Professor Walland, which were signed and in order. He looked at the stage manager Veronica, who was sitting across from him, with the expression of a man who also did not believe in teleportation but was finding the alternatives equally difficult. They decided to send Veronica to the police with the telegrams. This was the rational response. Something irregular had happened with the director. The police should know about it. The administrative machinery should be engaged. Veronica took the telegrams and left. He did not arrive at the police station. He arrived, instead, at a place he had not intended to go, by means he could not afterward account for, and encountered Azazello, the red-haired member of Walland's retinue, who delivered a message that was simple and specific: stop sending telegrams, stop making reports, mind your own business. The message was delivered with a persuasiveness that Veronica found, in the moment, entirely convincing. He was returned to the VARIET in a condition that could be described as cooperative. More cooperative, in fact, than Veronica had ever been in his administrative career. He went back to Rimsky and told him that the telegrams from Yalta were a hoax, that Stopa was in Moscow, that everything was fine. Rimsky looked at him. Something was wrong with Veronica. Not visibly wrong, not in a way that could be precisely identified and reported. A quality of wrongness that resided in his eyes, and in the way he moved, and in the particular quality of his cooperativeness, which was the cooperativeness of something that had recently been adjusted. Rimsky did not know what to do with this observation. He filed it away, and turned his attention to the evening's performance, which was approaching. Part 1. Chapter 11. The Schism of Ivan. In the psychiatric hospital, Ivan Homeless was having a better day. The fever of his first days had passed. The urgency of his conviction about Walland, the need to act, to report, to do something, had faded into a quieter certainty that was easier to live with. He still believed what he had seen. He simply no longer felt that his believing it required immediate action. He lay in his room, and thought about the conversation with the master. He thought about the burned manuscript, about a story of Pontius Pilate, that had been given to a writer by means neither of them could explain, about the master's calm in the face of everything, his acceptance of the hospital, his matter-of-fact relationship with his own ruination, his inability to say the name of the woman he loved. Ivan had been a poet before all of this, a member of Masalit, a writer of verse that was, by his own subsequent assessment, not very good, verse produced with the confidence of a young man who has not yet understood the distance between what he is doing and what he thinks he is doing. He was not going to write that kind of verse anymore. He understood this with the clarity of a person who has been shown, by a sequence of events he could not have invented, exactly what serious literature looks like and exactly how far he was from it. The encounter with Walland, the conversation with the master, the days in the hospital, all of it had done what formal education had not. It had shown him the size of the thing he had been attempting, and the inadequacy of his attempts. He was not distressed by this. He was, in a way that surprised him, relieved. He would start again, differently, with less confidence and more understanding. He was 23 years old and he had been shown something that most writers did not get shown until much later, if ever, the specific quality of genuine literature, as opposed to the literature he had been producing. That was worth what it had cost. He lay in his clean room, and thought about the master's story of Pontius Pilate, and found himself wanting to know how it ended. He asked a nurse if he could have some paper. She brought him paper. He wrote at the top, on the question of Pontius Pilate. Then he sat for a long time, looking at the paper, and wrote nothing further. The story was not his to tell, but the fact that he wanted to tell it, wanted to find a way into it, wanted to understand what the Master had understood about that morning in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, felt like the beginning of something. Not today. But eventually, he put the paper aside and looked out the window at the hospital garden and felt, for the first time since Patriarch's Pawns, something that was close to peace. Part 1, Chapter 12, Black Magic and its Exposure. The Black Magic show at the VARIET was sold out. Moscow had heard about the foreign professor. Word had traveled through the city with the efficiency that interesting rumors achieve in closed societies, where the appetite for the unusual is sharpened by the scarcity of the unusual. The VARIET was packed. Every seat taken. Standing room gone. People pressed against the walls and craned from the gallery with the collective expectation of an audience that has heard this will be worth seeing. The compeer, a man named Georges Bengalski, smooth and professional, with the particular shine of someone who has introduced many acts, and learned to perform confidence regardless of what he actually feels, stepped onto the stage and began his introduction. Walland appeared. He appeared without theatrical entrance, no smoke, no light, no fanfare. He was simply there, on the stage, in a black suit, with his mismatched eyes surveying the house with the expression of someone who has seen many audiences in many cities across many centuries, and finds this one adequately representative of the species. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell me, are Muscovites different from what they were? Has the city changed them, or have they changed the city?" It was not a question that required an answer. It was the kind of question that establishes a frame, that signals to an audience that what they are about to see is going to be interested in them as much as they are interested in it. Korolev appeared beside him, in his checkered jacket, with his cracked pince-nez, and his air of finding everything enormously funny. Bengalski said, smoothly, "The professor is going to show us some tricks of the conjuring arts, the latest achievements of Western technology." Walland looked at him. He said, "I am not going to show you tricks. Tricks imply deception. What I am going to show you is real." Bengalski laughed. The audience laughed with him. Walland looked at the audience with the expression of a man who has said something true and is observing, without surprise, the laughter that truth provokes. What followed was the show. Cards appeared from the air. Money rained from the ceiling. Genuine money, the audience established, examining it with the care of people who know what genuine money looks like. 100-ruble notes, real and crisp and inexplicable, falling from somewhere above the stage into the laps and hands of delighted Muscovites. The audience scrambled. There was laughter and shouting and the particular atmosphere of a crowd that has decided, for the moment, to abandon dignity in favor of joy. Bengalski, smooth professional that he was, stepped forward to explain that this was all an illusion, that the money was not real, that. Walland looked at him. He said, "Why does he keep interrupting?" Korolev said, thoughtfully, "He is rather tiresome, isn't he?" Walland said, "What do you think we should do about it?" The audience, warmed up, delighted, in the particular state of collective suggestibility that a good show produces, called out various suggestions. Most of them were mild. One was not. Someone shouted, "Take his head off." Walland said, "An excellent suggestion." Behemoth, the cat, who had been sitting at the side of the stage with the patient expression of a professional waiting for his cue, moved. What happened next was brief and efficient and entirely impossible. Bengalski's head was no longer attached to Bengalski. It sat on the stage, separate from its owner, with an expression of considerable surprise. Bengalski's body stood for a moment, then sat down. The audience went very quiet. Then, Bengalski's head said, from the stage, "Put it back." There was a pause. Then the head said, with somewhat less composure, "Please." Walland looked at the audience. He said, "Should we put it back?" The audience, with the generosity of people who have been thoroughly entertained, and are feeling charitable, said yes. The head was replaced. Bengalski was restored to his previous configuration, minus most of his composure, and a significant portion of his professional confidence. He was helped off the stage. He was taken to a hospital, where he would remain for some time, in the care of psychiatrists who found his account of the evening difficult to process. The show continued. A boutique appeared on the stage, a ladies' dress shop, staffed by attractive assistants, offering the latest Parisian fashions free of charge, to any woman in the audience who wished to exchange her current outfit. The women of Moscow, practical and fashion-conscious in equal measure, formed a queue. The show was, by any measure, a success. What happened to the money and the dresses afterward, when the rubles turned to foreign currency, and the Parisian fashions evaporated in the cold morning air? That was the next day's problem. Tonight, Moscow was enchanted. Tonight, in the packed and delirious VARIET, the city had been shown something it could not explain, and had responded the way cities always respond to the inexplicable, with laughter, with greed, and with the complete absence of the question it most needed to ask, which was, what does he want? Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Part 1, Chapters 10 through 12 of The Master and Margarita, by Mikhail Bulgakov. In the next episode, the aftermath of the VARIET show spreads through Moscow like a fire. The money causes chaos. The dresses disappear. Officials investigate. And Walland, having introduced himself to the city in the most spectacular way available to him, turns his attention to a different kind of business, the business that brought him to Moscow in the first place, which has nothing to do with conjuring tricks, and everything to do with a manuscript, a master, and a woman named Margarita. The next episode is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.